Okay, this is a great question from one of our Facebook friends. And we run across this all the time.
Okay.
So I think we should answer this. We know how to answer this. At least I do. Mine is my gut, yours is your head. That's how we answer it. What do we do when a seller wants to stay in the house and rent it back from us after we've pulled them out of foreclosure? And how do we make that decision, and what are the considerations?
Since you know the answer, I'm going to let you answer this one.
Well, my answer and your answer are going to be two different things.
Well, let's hear yours.
Mine would be my gut feeling about that person. I would look at how far behind are they, what was the circumstance, how they fell behind, you know, how does the place look, all those variables that say, okay, this person just fell on bad times, they've now got a good job, they need a break, they have a family, they want to keep the kids at school, their history is good, let's give them a shot. That's my answer. What's
That's
yours?
why you are in that red category. This is why I'm in the blue category. So first off, there are no legal reasons why you cannot buy a home from somebody and lease it back to them.
Okay.
Doesn't matter whether it's pre-foreclosure or not. Leasing back is not a sale back, okay? There's a difference in that. From there, if somebody is in default and behind in payments, you at least allocated that correctly, is look what happened. Why did they get behind? What's different today? And can they afford the property? That's the bottom line. Again, don't set somebody up to fail. If they can't afford it, they can't afford it. If they can verify that they have the new income sourcing, they got that new job, they got that raise, they got married, whatever it might be that allows them that opportunity, it's okay then. But for me, it's not a feel-good thing per se. I understand wanting to help people when they need it short term, but also you have to look at what is your goal with that property. You know, you usually buy a home to make a profit on it. And I can see leasing it back to them short term, sometimes maybe long term based on the transaction and what the investor wants to do with that home. But I think first and foremost, you have to identify who the tenant is going to be in this case, and underwrite them like any other tenant appropriately.
Okay. What are the typical closing costs for an owner finance transaction, and what does that include and what doesn't it include?
So they vary based upon where you go, obviously. If you're closing in a title company, you're going to have your standard title fees, escrow fees, title fees, etc. But who is going to draft your paperwork? A title company cannot draw up your mortgage documents. So they have to go to an outside law firm or an associated law firm, and the question becomes, do they have knowledge of this industry or not? So that's the first thing to look at, and every title company is going to be a little bit different. In our firm, we try to standardize our costs and fees. They're about $1,950 per transaction. And what we try to do, unlike anybody else in Texas, is we provide disclosures for our buyer, whether it is an investment acquisition or an owner-occupied sale, whether it's debt-free or with existing debt on it, and they are different in all those scenarios. But we have the documentation to cover those issues for them. So we encompass all that into one package. The disclosures, if they need help drafting that contract the first or second time, we'll do that for them. On the sales side, it includes the escrow fees, it's the document preparation, it's the title search fees. Now, if you are in a county where we're unable to do a title search, we have to do an abstract. And abstracts are going to cost not $150, but usually $300, $325. So it's going to increase that cost a little bit. And then, of course, what's the situation with your buyer? Do they want title insurance or not? That could increase that cost a little bit. But it includes the recording fees. It is all-encompassing. Whenever I'm dealing with a back-end home buyer, and I'm talking with the investor, or maybe there's a realtor involved, I like just to say about $3,000. Why? That's the legal fees. Those are usually the loan processing fees for the RMLO, because that's about $8 $14.50 per transaction.
Okay.
And then usually about $50 or so for a loan setup packaging out there. But I don't want to say $2,928.14. $3,000 is an easy number to remember. It's usually going to be a little bit south of that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. What would you say is a realistic time frame in closing an owner finance transaction?
Let's talk about which side of the deal we're closing, okay?
Okay.
If we're closing an acquisition, closing a commercial transaction, non-owner occupied, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can close that, although we can close it almost immediately, I still like 10 to 14 days. Why? Well, I want to give to the seller the disclosures because if there's an existing mortgage being left in place, I want them to have time to read the paperwork. I want them to seek outside counsel. I don't care whether it's financial counsel, a realtor, a lawyer, what it might be, but have time to ask questions. Then they come to the closing table and we're going to redisclose that all over again. It's a fail-safe mechanism to ensure that our seller and buyer go into this with their eyes wide open.
Right.
Same thing on the back end. I like the same time frames at 10 to 14 days. But also, when you're using an RMLO, from day one that the buyer contacts the RMLO and they start that process, provided the paperwork comes in quickly,
Right.
you need about 10 days in there from a requirement perspective to do that. And so it just feels comfortable. Minimum 10, really 14.
Yeah.
And from there it's negotiated as to what they want to do.
Right. So it's important they get that paperwork with the RMLO started quickly.
It is. But really
or
what
else
I
that
like to
could
do,
drag it on.
it can a little bit, but it's more important to give the buyer or the seller, if we're buying their home, time to review the paperwork, understand the transaction, and make sure they understand it before they come to closing. Last thing I want is someone to come to the closing table, not know what it is they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
confusion happens, and then who knows what happened thereafter.
Okay.
So I like a good offense, I think, as we always say, is your best defense, right?
Okay. So that's 3 weeks, 2 weeks? 2 to 3 weeks?
I like minimum 2 weeks, basically.
Okay.